Hello and welcome to One Trek Mind. It's me, Michael.
And me, Raptor.
And we're going to be discussing our review for the first episode of Strange New Worlds Season 3. And right off the bat, I will say, I don't think either of us were super impressed with this first episode, which is a bit disappointing.
As the channel's gone, I'm especially unimpressed.
Yeah, as much as we both love this show, this was not what we were looking for in this first episode back when it comes to the, concluding part of this two-parter for Hegemony.
Let's just do a general sort of walkthrough of the episode. So, at the end of last season, the Gorn attacked a non-Federation aligned planet, took a bunch of colonists, the Enterprise arrived to try and stop them, and some of the Enterprise crew got nabbed by the Gorn, and we basically start this episode straight immediately after the Enterprise crew has been nabbed by the Gorn. The Enterprise is under fire from a Gorn fleet that has arrived, and they're ordered to retreat back to Federation territory. They don't want to go back to Federation territory without being able to track the ship that has the Enterprise crew, so they come up with a plan which involves ramming the Enterprise through the shields of the Gorn destroyer and planting a torpedo laced with a particular substance that they can track in a sort of, I suppose it's a sort of hark back to Star Trek V's Iridium patch trick that Spock uses on Kirk. Meanwhile, in sickbay, obviously Captain Pike's love interest is infected with the Gorn parasites, and so they're trying to put her into stasis, but it's discovered that she's allergic to the serum that they use to put people into stasis, so they're basically on a clock. They have got to get these things out of her within the next few hours, essentially. So back in Federation space, Captain Pike and Admiral April have a frank exchange of views over the situation. The Federation position is it's a non-Federation aligned world, it has nothing to do with us, we can't risk a war with the Gorn. And Pike is like, well, if we take that stance, they're just going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until we have a war with the Gorn, so do something now or fight them later. Eventually, Admiral April decides to officially tell Pike to go and patrol the border, but unofficially tells him to go and punch them back, essentially. So it's a mission off the books. Meanwhile, Scotty and Pelia are having some nice character moments down in what we think is close to or might be the Enterprise's cetacean ops, given the water underneath them in the floor. And they're working on getting the Gorn shielding working for the Enterprise so that they can sneak across the border and basically not be detected. And then we switch to the Gorn ship, where everything turns into, the last act of Mass Effect 2, if anyone's played that.
Oh yeah, I didn't even pick that up, but 100% that's the same thing.
Yep, or something from Species 8472 land, where we see the inside of the Gorn ship, it's all bio-organic, and we are reunited with La'an and a few of the other crew, where it turns out that this part of the ship they're all stuck in the pods of is a digestion chamber, which is equal parts horrifying, disgusting, and again, I have some thoughts about this and the depiction of the Gorn, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on. It's so bad, in fact, that Ortega's has lost half of her hand, which shocked both me and Michael because it was god gnarly.
Yeah, this show doesn't go as far as Discovery does most of the time, but that was one moment where they did in fact go that far, and I was like, whoa, holy shit.
Which on the one hand I do appreciate, because Star Trek has always seemed a little bit almost censored too much to being not showing the truth of these injuries and stuff, but
true.
There is a fine line, I think. Anyway, Spock and Nurse Chapel are desperately trying to figure out a way of getting these Gorn eggs out of Captain Pike's love interest, and basically they're having no luck. They really can't find a way of doing it until Nurse Chapel and Spock come up with this idea that maybe Illyrian blood plasma can help give the human body a bit of an immune system boost. So they're going to take some of that from number 1. I found it particularly ironic that Captain Batel spent part of season 2 trying to get rid of Una, and now her blood is going to possibly save her life. Back on the Gorn ship, they come up with a plan to steal some Gorn transporter codes so that they can get everybody off of the ship together at once they're back on the Enterprise. And working with Uhura and Una, it's discovered that the Gorn's cycles of activity are related to stellar phenomenon, primarily coronal mass ejections and other things like that. And basically the idea is that they could, by utilizing light, force the Gorn to go into hibernation. But Uhura warns them that the cycle of activity that they're coming into at the moment could be a sign of increased aggressive activity. The Enterprise tracks the Gorn ship to a binary star system, which Pike supposes could be the Gorn's homeworld inside this system, because the binary stars create basically a natural cloaking device which they can't see through to get to see the Gorn homeworld. A huge Gorn fleet suddenly erupts from this place between the binary stars, heading straight for the Federation, leaving Enterprise stuck in a situation of trying to help their crew or stopping the fleet. In sickbay, Spock and Nurse Chapel start working on trying to get the young out of her back in another quite gnarly sort of scene, until Spock has an idea that maybe they're treating this issue wrong, and instead of trying to get the young out, they should be feeding the young, because the young break through the human body in order to feed. So if they feed the young, forces the young to stay in the human body fights it like a disease, and the Illyrian blood they've already pumped into Batel helps with all the toxins and nasty stuff that is created as the human body breaks down and reabsorbs these young that it didn't have, which is what they do. Pike, meanwhile, has the Enterprise turn into a coronal mass ejection in between the binary stars, which Scotty and Pelia work together to create and have happen. I thought many of the scenes between Pelia and Scotty were quite good, kind of showing Scotty's future engineering success. On the Gorn ship, they manage to get the transporter codes and get to a ship to escape, but there's a bit of a firefight. In the firefight, Captain Kirk's brother is injured, and Ortegas is really seriously injured. She gets like
super injured.
Gorn claws to the chest.
Potentially not coming back for episode 2.
Yes, potentially, which again, we'll talk about in a sec. But they do steal a ship. Erica manages to fly the ship with her wounds out of the Gorn destroyer, gets the transporter codes to the Enterprise to beam all the colonists off the Gorn ship, and the Enterprise succeeds in forcing the Gorn attack fleet that was heading to Starfleet to go into a hibernation cycle, saving the day. And according to what we hear, Ortegas is in a critical but stable condition. Batel is awake and recovering. She has a nice moment with Pike towards the end of the episode, and the Gorn have left. And that's basically the episode, in short.
Let's start breaking it down.
Where would we like to begin?
I mean, let's begin at the beginning with our opening scene. I've seen criticisms against this scene as well as like staunch supporters of the scene, and I fall kind of in between that, where I'm like, on one hand, I'm not a fan of the ship ramming another ship as the sort of like answer to this problem, because I feel like that's a very common thing we've come into with modern Star Trek.
I was about to say, modern Star Trek has a fetish for ramming ships together. We saw it with the Cleve ship in Discovery. We saw it in Discovery Season 5, where they rammed 2 ships into the ground at full impulse, and now we've had it here in Enterprise. And I suppose you could use the argument of, oh, well, they've got deflector shields, and blah, blah, blah. The only time we see 2 starships ram into each other, and I think it's anything remotely accurate, is in Nemesis. And that is what 2 nearly million tons worth of material smacking into each other at unfathomable speeds would be like. It would be horrific. Modern Star Trek just treats these starships like they're plastic toys in the hands of infants, and you can just fling them around and fling them into walls and they'll be fine. Because, you know, shields, technobabble. I just think it's really unrealistic. I was okay with them using the shields to pass through the Gorn shields in destructive interference, because that's a real that's a real thing, destructive interference patterning, and it makes sense. But then when you then ram that ship into another physical object, it's going to cause damage. And while the Enterprise
casualties
internally
as well,
while the Enterprise internally looks like it's going to need a few months in refit, externally the ship is fine. And I just call bullshit on that.
I would agree, but I did really like the scene for the fact that we finally saw a captain asking his crew, what is the best solution here? And everyone in the crew on the bridge is like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And he says, no, yes, that's the idea we're going for. And I love that.
Agree.
I do like that we finally have a captain who's not just the smartest person in the room and comes up with a solution, but he asks his crew to help him with this, which I do really like. But I agree, crashing the ship into the other ship should cause more damage, more of an issue than it is presented here. And it makes the scene kind of a weird dichotomy of like, oh, I really like that, and oh, I really don't like that. So to me, the scene is kind of null. Like,
yeah,
as a whole, I wouldn't give it a bonus or a negative point to it. It's just like, you did some good, you did some bad, so onward we go, I guess.
I do appreciate the conversation that April and Pike have.
Yeah, I like that scene.
Modern Star Trek has been a lot more willing to question the Federation's bureaucracy, which we both appreciate, and I do appreciate the exchange of views here, and I appreciate the fact that eventually Pike convinces April that we have to do something, otherwise, just like the Klingons, we're going to be fighting them anyway X number of years down the line. We've got to do something now.
I mean, that was my biggest criticism of DS9, was their lack of initiative action in order to join the fight with the Dominion. And I do appreciate here, again, that Captain Pike was like, we are going to get screwed if we just let this build and build to a point where we can't combat this anymore. And I completely agree. Again, overall, I don't really like their depiction of the Gorn here, but...
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yes, we'll get to that. But since they have depicted them as this really malicious force that is clearly going to cause a serious problem for everyone, I'm glad Captain Pike was like, look, diplomacy aside, we have to do something here, or we are going to be perceived as the weak enemy that is going to be destroyed. And I agree. The way the Gorn are depicted here, yes, they would have been really screwed over if they did not do something here. So I appreciate that scene where he does, in fact, convince him, at least personally, that yes, we have to do something. So overall, I give the scene a win. That one I did appreciate.
So let's get to the Gorn.
Yeah, I'll start first, because...
I hold on. I think it's worth, before we talk at length here, the Gorn have been very loosely established in Star Trek lore previous. We know from the original series, it's a comical reptile costume. Star Trek Online certainly focused a lot more on the Gorn and created more of a distinctive look for them, which I appreciate, and more of a backstory and lore for them.
Which is what your Gorn on this channel is represented by, is online.
But it is non-canon because Star Trek Online. Enterprise had a Gorn show up, but again, it wasn't anything much. Strange New Worlds is the first show to really try to flesh out, excuse the pun, the Gorn in any significant way. But...
I don't like it.
Go ahead. Yeah, we don't like it.
I don't like it. I thought with the first part of this episode, them saying like, oh, there might be more to the Gorn. Like, maybe they're not just bloodthirsty monsters. We can, in fact, potentially like reason with them. We can actually establish some sort of diplomacy with them. And this episode said no. They're evil monsters. The only way we can defeat them is to trick them. And that's all there is to it. They're evil monsters. That's it. And I really, really do not like that. I think that is a critical misstep. And I think this was their perfect opportunity to be like, look, we've represented them initially as this evil force. But hey, maybe there's something else to them. And I think on top of that, it would have really complimented Captain Pike as a character to be the one to find some sort of
diplomatic solution to this situation.
But he doesn't. They all agree they're monsters. We have to do something in order to trick them, because otherwise they're just going to come and kill us all. And I really dislike that choice. I think that is, as I said, a critical misstep in terms of the Gorn.
And unfortunately, not only, did they turn them into xenomorphs, which ultimately I think was a terribly boring idea anyway, but they've now doubled down on the whole horrible, ghastly roast stuff by making, their ships will digest you now in organic pods.
I will say, I don't hate that.
It fits with their depiction of the Gorn. But now, so every single time someone in a later Star Trek show, like DS9, mentions, I'm meeting the Gorn ambassador, he's showing up on his starship, don't worry about all the people being digested in the ship. I don't see how the Gorn here ever became a group of people that Starfleet could have ambassadors towards. How could that ever be the case?
The way they're depicted here makes it really clear that any kind of diplomatic solution could never work. Ever. Like, there is under no circumstances this could work. They digest people in their ships. They have entire planets devoted to breeding the people and letting their young eat those people afterwards. Again, depicted just as monsters. Like, there is no way these could become monsters. Part of the Federation as they do in Star Trek Online or in any potential future Star Trek stories, which I think is just a critical misstep. I think it is a bad choice. It makes them less interesting.
Yeah, because they're just a movie monster now.
Yeah, they're just monsters. Like, I feel bad saying it. Some people might really dislike my opinion right here, but watching this episode of Strange New Worlds gave me the same vibes as I got watching Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm sure there's some people who are like, I love that movie. I did not. And
I have yet to see it, but I suspect I won't either.
This is the reason why I don't like it. Like, you're taking a potentially really interesting concept of like, these Gorn that we think are monsters, which, again, the way I would have written the story, these Gorn that we think are potentially monsters are actually a civilization that do have rhyme and reason to what they're doing, so we can speak to them. We can actually come to a solution here. They instead were like, no. They're monsters. That's it. There's no gray area. There's no interesting developments to the Gorn as people. They are just monsters that either need to be killed or pushed off onto someone else as someone else's problem, as they said in the episode. And I really don't like that. I think it muddies up the canon. I think it makes the Gorn very uninteresting. And in general, it's just very cliched for them to be like, let's just make them monsters that we have to fight and kill and deal with their horrible body horror stuff. And it's just, it really drives me crazy that that's the route they ended up taking here, especially in part 1, where they hinted at the fact that maybe we can reason with them. Maybe there is something more to them. And unfortunately, part 2 said, no, there's not. They're just evil. Proceed. And it's really frustrating. I really don't like it.
It is disappointing because this is the first, for once we have a Star Trek show that isn't just focusing on the Klingons, the Romulans, the Cardassians. They pick a race that we don't know. They have been sorely underused in the canon. I mean, the Tholians have also been underused. The Gorn have been underused. The Zinkethi have been barely used. And instead of doing something interesting to flesh these creatures out, they literally just went alien, and that was it. Yep. Alien with a bit of collectors from Mass Effect 2. That's what we want this group of people to be. Now, how the fuck did they ever invent warp drive if this is what they're like? What?
Yeah, I also question, like, they've invented transporter tech, warp drive, all these crazy ships, but all they've seemed to care about is eating other people and breeding off of these other people. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it as I've said multiple times now, it makes them uninteresting. Now they're just a cliched alien supervillain that we've seen a million times over, and it's just really frustrating. I have a lot of issues with the way they depicted the Gorn in this episode. The only thing I can say positive about the Gorn in this episode is that we got to see more of their adult forms.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that came to attack La'an and the crew that was stranded on the ship. And I do prefer the adult versions of them because it looks at least a little more in line with what we expect out of the Gorn from what we've seen of them before. But that's a very minor plus I can give to the episode when the Gorn themselves are just monsters. Like, they're just evil monsters that want to eat everything, and it's just I don't like it. I really don't like it.
I also have a particular dislike for how the episode ended.
It felt very abrupt. I was like, are we not going to catch up with Ortegas or the colonists? Or
these colonists were still being digested the entire time Ortegas and La'an and Mbenga and the rest were trying to get out of the Gorn ship, and they're just beamed aboard and we are expected to assume everything is good.
Yeah. The demarcation line, I think, is the number one thing where I'm like, shouldn't we have, said something about that? Because, again, they make it clear, they all went into hibernation right now. And I was like, you're telling me all of them did? Your ship was in an isolated area. Unless every single Gorn was right there as that happened, I kind of don't believe that the problem is just completely gone now. But that's clearly what the episode is trying to tell you. Hey, canon tells us that the Gorn aren't really a threat or a big deal in the original series. So how do we get to that point? And they said, oh, well, we tricked them all into going back into hibernation so that, again, as they say, they're a problem for someone else, basically. And it just feels really unsatisfying to me. I was like, but we never really got anything with the Gorn in the original series either. We just got the one episode, and the only attempt to do anything with the Gorn is Star Trek Online, which apparently is not canon. So what the fuck? Where did they all go? When are they all going to show up again? It just leaves the potential for the Gorn to be a problem for, honestly, how much you want to bet that they bring in the Gorn for Starfleet Academy. I really hope that's not the case, because if they do, that will not only make me dislike that show as a whole, but again, it's just so lazy. We could have done something with the Gorn here. We had a perfect opportunity to do something more with them, but instead they are just brushed aside. They're like, okay, we don't have to worry about that on this show anymore. We'll worry about that in another show. And it's just frustrating. I really don't like that decision.
So I'm going to say something that people might give us some hate for in the comments. Patel or Ortegas should be dead.
I think potentially Ortegas might be dead. I would not be surprised if going into episode 2, they're talking about how Ortegas didn't make it, which I think would not be good, because I think if you're going to take a character out, you should give them a true final moment to shine, which flying a Gorn ship is not it, in my opinion. Battelle is clearly going to be okay. The trailers kind of spoiled that well in advance that she was going to be a part of this season. So I kind of knew going into it, like, she's going to be fine. I don't know how, but she's going to be okay. Ortegas, I genuinely don't know if they got rid of her character or if she's going to stick around. I think the way they went about it in this episode, I would be disappointed if they did kill her off, because that would be wildly unsatisfying, in my opinion.
But just for stake's sake, like, if Patel had died, there was interesting character development there for Pike. If Ortegas had died, there's interesting character development for the whole crew on the ship. And at least the episode would have had some balls to do something long-lasting, like, let's kill off one of these characters.
Which they haven't done since season 1 with Hemmer.
Instead, Patel's fine, and Ortegas is critical but stable, which might as well be she's also going to be fine. I really seriously doubt they're going to kill her off. I think if they were going to kill her off, she would have died in this episode, not in the time between. Especially given the next episode.
I mostly agree.
A wedding episode. I don't think you're going to kill a character off in that episode.
I mean, we're clearly going to get a time jump between this episode and the next one, because everyone has different hairstyles and all that shit.
The ship's kind of fucked.
Yeah, they're clearly going to do a time jump between this episode and the next. But I agree. It feels like for this big two-parter, they had an opportunity to really amplify the stakes for some of these characters. Battelle was the one where I was like, I feel like if you're going to kill a character, it should be this one. Normally, I wouldn't say that because I don't like fridging a character, especially a female character, just for the sake of a male character's development. But if you're going to do it, like, this was the opportunity to do it. And they did not, so I mostly agree. Ortegas is probably going to be okay, and Battelle is clearly okay, so nothing really happened. Like, they just sidelined a problem that they kind of invented for the show.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's been any consequences of what's happened, apart from perhaps Ortega now only having half a hand.
She'll regrow it. They have... There's plenty of Star Trek medical tech that allows you to regrow arms and appendages and things. I'm pretty sure she'll come back 100% fine.
Yeah, it just didn't have any long-lasting consequences. I mean, even the Enterprise itself was fine. It turned into a star for a brief moment and was fine. It wasn't even a burn mark on the fucking hull.
Which I will say, I am not a fan of technobabble in general. I am usually the number one critic of them technobabbling their way out of a situation, but that seemed to me kind of fucking crazy that they were like, we're gonna turn the ship into a star essentially, and they just get away with it scot-free. I don't know if I like that. Like, for me, that was a bit much.
If there is one constant in Star Trek episodes, at least the Legacy show, stars are still dangerous to Star Trek ships. Usually, if you're going to go near one, it's dangerous. Your shields start to drop pretty fast. You need a specific type of shield in Star Trek The Next Generation's case. You know, the one time Beverly Crusher was captain of the Enterprise, she took the ship into the Coronosphere, used metaphasic shields to protect the ship for a brief time to lure the Borg cube there and then destroy the Borg cube, but they still had to get the hell out of Dodge pretty quick. You know, it's not the sort of thing that you do if you can help it. Turning your starship into a star and it be, as Captain Pike says, we'll just turn it off before it blows up.
Also, I didn't like the filmmaking choices they made during that scene, where it's just tons of close-ups on the characters being really bright. I was like, what are we doing right here? It felt like metaphysical and surreal in a way that I don't think lended itself to that scene. I don't know. Like, I would really have to dig deep into my like filmmaking knowledge to explain why I didn't like that scene, but I didn't like it. It was, I don't know, it just felt like hokey in a way that I didn't like. This show in general has made a really good run of making corny and hokey kind of things work for the show. That scene did not work for me. I was just kind of pulled out of the moment and going, okay, so we're just going to do a lot of close-ups where we turn up the brightness of the scene a whole lot just to make it more intense. And I don't know, I didn't really feel it. So yeah, not my favorite moment from the show for sure.
We've been talking a lot about criticisms, so let's maybe talk about what we think was good. I think everything between Scotty and Pelia was very good. I mean, it was
agreed. Those were some of the best scenes in the episode. I liked La'an in this episode. I think her staunch
PTSD.
determination and the constant PTSD being thrown at her was quite good. I did not, again, moving away from what we liked, I did not like the Spock and Chapel relationship drama in this episode. It felt very out of place. Again, they said, oh, we don't have much time, so let's make this quick. And then proceed to have like a 5-minute scene where they discuss their relationship. And I was like, again, you have someone on the table right now, on the clock, that really needs your help. I don't think this is the appropriate time to be having this conversation. just to get it out of the way, because again, I do want to go to the things I liked about the episode. I hated probably the number one thing I hated in this episode was Uhura's wig. That looked really bad. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be that kind of person, but that wig looked fucking awful, and I don't know what they were thinking.
Specific screen cap for that now, aren't I?
It looked really bad, though. Like, it was... There were moments where she would turn her head, and I was just like, oh, no.
Is it the same
that
that she was
really
wearing
bad.
in the first episode?
She didn't have a wig in the first 2 seasons, I believe. That was just her hair. But because they did the time jump and everyone has different hairstyles after this episode, they needed everyone to either wear wigs or somehow make their look kind of, track with the finale of the last episode. So she wore a wig, Uhura did, in this episode, and it looked really bad. Like, it looked really awful, I think. And it was very distracting. Like, normally I wouldn't comment on something like that, but there were scenes with her, and I was like, ooh, that's bad. That's really bad, dude. And, it distracted me. It pulled me out of her scenes in particular, which was unfortunate.
On the positive side, I liked the way that Pike acted as captain here. Yes, his love interest is down in the sickbay, having xenomorphic Gorn growing out of her back, but he is still behaving like a proper professional, not looking at anyone in particular. Starfleet captain should be acting. He's taking charge of the situation. He's obviously slightly emotionally compromised, but he's not, I don't know, committing mutiny on his commanding officer Robert April because he wants to go and do the thing against the bad guys that he thinks is correct because everything he says is correct. Again, not looking at anyone in particular. He keeps control of the situation, and at some points is very obviously stressed or in shock. At the beginning of the episode, he is obviously in shock at what's happening, but he very quickly snaps out of it and gets back on with the job.
Agreed. There's one scene in particular that I imagine some people will dislike, but I actually really liked, was him going to Batel at the very end of the episode and saying, okay, Dad, I guess you win. And he starts praying. That... I can see some people saying, like, oh, that's so against, like, Star Trek and Roddenberry's vision. But in really stressful, dire situations, there are a lot of people, when they have no other options, will turn to religion as their last-ditch effort to do something about it. And I actually appreciated that out of his character. I think, on one hand, it gives you a reason as to why maybe he didn't really fall in line with his dad and had such a tumultuous relationship with him in the first place, which I resonate with personally. But again, it makes him feel more human. It makes him feel like, okay, he's exhausted all of his options. He's been a great captain throughout the entire episode. And now the only thing left he has in order to potentially do for his love interest is to pray for her. And I actually really like that scene. At first, I was like, ooh, I don't know where we're going with this. And I ended up really liking that choice, personally.
I agree with everything you have said, but I didn't like that choice. I do not see Christianity as the bastion of morality anymore. Some of the stuff that has happened, especially in America over the last 10 years, primarily from God-fearing Christians, has been awful. The way they have treated certain groups of people has been awful. Star Trek should be a bastion of better thinking than some of what Christianity at the moment is being used for. Now, yes, that's a current day prejudice against, who in the next couple of 100 years, when peace and everything in Star Trek has happened, maybe it's better. My problem is the show is not being made 200 years in the future. The show is being made now. And the use of very distinctly Christian prayer does bring with it current day. I'm not going to say current day meanings. I'm going to say it does bring current day issues, because there are hyper conservatives that watch this show, and I don't know. I feel maybe it's me hyper responding to something that's ultimately not that important, but I do think it's potential. There's the potential for problems.
Fair enough. Again, I liked the scene just because, again, I think in acts of desperation, there are a lot of people that do turn to religion, which I think it's a very fair thing to attribute to the character of Pike. But ultimately, I appreciate that it didn't overstay its welcome as well. Like, he begins the prayer and then very quickly stops she's awake. But I definitely see your criticisms to it, 100%.
It's not like he was ever... It's not like it would be the beginning of a Muslim prayer, or a Jewish prayer, or a Buddhist prayer, or a Sikh, or a Hindu prayer. It would just be a Christian prayer, is my point I'm trying to make. Maybe Starfleet needs... or Star Trek needs a invented Star Trek religion in order to kind of avoid that sort of thing happening.
Or at least give other religions a chance to shine there. Why not have it be a Muslim prayer? Why not? We're, hundreds and hundreds of years into the future. There's no definitive rule that says this white man can't be Muslim. I mean, there's no definitive rule now that says that. So I agree, having it be a Christian prayer, while probably easier to write, there's no need for it. You could have done something else, which potentially could have made the character a little more interesting, a little more nuanced. But again, I see what you're saying.
Other than that, I mean, I think the show's obvious high budget has come through still. It's there. It was filmed pretty good, apart from that scene when the ship turned into a star. I thought it was edited reasonably well. I thought, even though I don't like what they've done with the Gorn, I thought the interior of the Gorn ship was wonderfully gross.
Yeah, they did a good job, even though I'm pretty sure that's going to be another one of those sets that everyone says, oh, it's so obvious you're using the volume, which I didn't pick up on initially until I remembered all those criticisms, and I was like, they probably did film this on the volume and just have a little circular space to work on. But I think what they did create there was quite well done as well.
And I have to say, on the prosthetics and makeup department, the half-digested folks, it looked pretty good to me, I have to say.
Yeah. I could tell some of the Gorn that they used were prosthetics, and not CGI. There was a scene, I think in particular, where they stick the phaser like right up to its neck.
Oh yeah,
that was 100% a real prop that they were using, and I think they did a good job with that. So kudos. But overall, I wouldn't say this was a bad episode. I just feel like it's very lackluster. Like,
considering the length of time there has been between the first part of this two-parter.
I mean, I don't even really consider that into my thought process anymore, because that's just where we're at. We're streaming shows now. It takes 2 to 3 years to make a new season. I don't like it, but that's just where we're at. So
it bloody matters to me. If you're gonna make me wait 2 to 3 years for a new season, the first episode of that new season better be fucking good. Especially if it's the next part of a two-parter you have left us all hanging for that length of time.
You see, that's where I hold them accountable. This is a two-parter. You made me wait for this second half of this episode. That I do hold you accountable for. Like, this should have been a really, really strong season opener for the show. And as of right now, it is the weakest of the 3 seasons premieres, in my opinion.
I would agree.
And that really disappoints me because, again, like you said, we waited a long time for this. And as a whole, I really like this show. But this, to me, it just felt lackluster. It didn't feel very satisfying. It felt very predictable. And just in general, it didn't do anything really interesting, which I thought for sure they were going to do, specifically with the race of Gorn. Like, we were going to get to know them a little bit better here, and we didn't really learn anything new about them.
I'll tell you what this feels like to me. This feels like not an episode that was written and divided into 2 parts. This feels like 2 separate episodes that they turned into a 2-parter. It feels like they wrote the first half, and then they wrote the second half, and didn't just write one long episode and cut it in half.
I agree. 100% I agree.
So, yeah, we're going to watch the second episode on Monday. This I'm hopefully going to get reviewed and out on Friday. Don't expect any magic in the editing. I'm just going to be really simple about it to get it out. So, yeah, let us know down in the comments what you guys thought about this particular episode, if you have seen it already. And, yeah, if you think we're being too harsh or not. I'm curious to see what you guys come up with in the comments.
I'm curious too, because I could see it going either way, where people are like, no, this is great. Like, this was a really strong episode. And I could see other people completely agreeing with us, like, no. Like, definitely not my favorite. Bordering, this might be extra harsh, but this might be my least favorite episode of Strange New Worlds that I've seen. I would have to rewatch it all to definitively say that, but considering this is the premiere that I've waited, 2 years for, I feel like it might be my least favorite episode that I've seen from the show, and it does make me really nervous for season 3, because I desperately want this show.
Massively great.
Yeah, the reviews have been pretty back and forth. Like, I've seen some really positive ones and some really negative ones, and this one is leaning me towards the negative side of things, and I really don't want that to be the case. Like, we've made it clear at this point that this is our favorite of the new modern era of Star Trek, and this was not a good indication for the future for the show, and I really hope this was just a slight misstep for them and they get right back on track. But yeah, this was more than not my favorite, maybe my least favorite of Strange New Worlds episodes I've seen, which really pains me to say. I want that to be really clear for anyone that is a really big fan of the show. I am not saying this because I wanted this show to fail. I really, really wanted it to exceed all expectations, but I didn't really like this episode. To be as plain and simple as I can be, I did not really like this episode, which is too bad. It's really too bad.
So yeah, let us know down in the comments what you think. And yeah, like I say, we'll watch the second of the 2 episodes that released today on Monday, and there'll be a review out for that. Again, probably on Tuesdays, so please go and watch that too. Don't forget to like the video and do all the usual YouTube stuff. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because it does help the channel grow. And growth has been difficult lately, so yeah, hopefully all the Strange New Worlds episodes will help. But yeah, we will see you next time. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.